Hi, welcome to my final project presentation. My name is Yixi, and this is the final project for Amazon CloudSearch for cloud computing course with Harvard Extension School. So, what is Amazon CloudSearch? On a regular basis, if you have a web app, a mobile app, or a website, at some point you might want to consider search. So if you want to set up search, you have to think about the hardware requirement. You have to think about the software requirement. You have to think about the algorithm. There are so many things at stake here. You want to be able to support large volumes of requests, and you don't want to waste money if there's no requests coming in. You have to figure out what software is good to go along with your website to support search, and also there's coding algorithm involved. And it can get quite overwhelming because it's hard to know exactly how much you need and etc. So CloudSearch is actually really good for this. It's a fully managed search as a service. So it takes care of hardware, software, algorithm concerns for you. It's really easy to establish. It takes less than an hour to do everything, and you can use S3 or DynamoDB if you already are using them, if you're already familiar with Amazon Web Service. And then also it accepts several types of files into and converts them automatically into JSON documents. So let's talk about benefits. One of the top benefits is automated indexing service, meaning if you have a file and say it's an Excel sheet and it has a lot of data, a lot of columns, and a lot of rows, and it's a hustle to index each and every single column one by one. Amazon actually offers a service where you just upload the file or import it from S3 or DynamoDB, and then you have it automatically index suggested for you. So this is actually one of the things I noticed when I am doing it with the Amazon console. So it's really useful. Another thing is scalable. It is really scalable, as in you don't have to specify anything at the creation of the domain. Amazon will automatically give you more resources as you have more users, and then less resources when you have less users. You can also control, so you have a cap, as in I don't want to have more resources than this much, then you don't actually pay more than that. Another thing is multi availability zone. So say you want to have domain search available for both East Coast and West Coast, you can do that. You can have identical domain for both availability zone, and no user in either side of the continent will have latency experience. Then we have extra features such as highlighting, such as field weighting, sorting, search in range. There's a lot of things you can play with, and there's even multilingual access. Then Amazon Cloud Search is a pay-as-you-go service. So it starts with as less as $100 per month, and right now I think they have a 30 days free to start with. So if you're curious about the service, you should definitely give it a try. Then lastly, control access. So this service has control access. You can control who can upload, who can search, and etc. So it's really useful. Next, it's not without drawbacks and challenges. So this is not Elasticsearch. It's mainly text-based. There's limits such as how many results can be returned, the scope of search, and everything. You cannot modify its search algorithm. So that's all you have: the index and the files, and you cannot go and say I want it to be faster and I want to change algorithm. It also doesn't return anything other than JSON and XML, so you can't really have them return objects to you. There's no such thing as find similar items feature, so if you have a retail store and you want to suggest similar products, that's not possible. Also, there's a lack of transparency in development. Like, you don't really know what's going on in the background, and you also don't know when are they going to come out with new features that will support more of your needs. However, Workflow wise, it's pretty simple to start with. Um, you begin with creating a domain. So a domain is where you will store your index and your files, which your files will be stored in the form of documents, right? So for example, to illustrate it a little bit, you have an Excel sheet, and then this Excel sheet has 10 items of customer name, address, telephone, and email. So the index will be the name, the address, the phone, and the email categories, right? And the document will be each customer's information, their name, say John Smith, and the address is 123 Prairie Drive, right? So this is to give you a basic idea. So you basically will index your domain for these kind of information and data you want to search, and then after you finish the index configuration, you upload the files that you will use for the search, and then you will do the actual search, and then also you can delete the domain when you no longer need it. So firstly, create domain. Create domain is pretty simple. It's like all the other Amazon Web Service SDK. You have to identify your credential. You have to set up your region, and then basically then you start with the domain name, right? Um, What's good to know is your domain name must be unique. It cannot be the same as anyone else, and the domain name have a character length limit. It only accepts character, numeric character, alphabet, and hyphen. You can only have one domain per region, so if you want this domain to also work in another region, you have to set up a similar or the same domain and then put it in that region. So you cannot have one domain for two regions. And it's also like we talked about before, it auto scales. You don't have to set up scaling limitation or baseline when you create the domain. It will scale for you automatically unless you know you really have a lot of volume and you want it to start a very high up. Code sample here, basically you use create domain method. After you set the domain name, you set the credential and everything, and you just run this method and you wait 10 minutes. You can see it actually in your console that is processing, and then after 10 minutes you see it as active. Next, creating index configuration. So index configuration, let's talk about it a little bit here. It's a little bit different when you do it in the console, because in the console you have the options of creating index configuration before you even are done with the create domain flow. You can also opt to do it afterwards, but that's the beauty of it, because you actually can upload files, and that's when Amazon will automatically index these files and give you index suggestions for you to configure. But over here we'll do it in a different way to show you how the SDK work. So something that's good to know is indexing can be done using files from local drive, S3, DynamoDB. You see this when you work with the console. It actually has 6 types of fields for you to choose from. So text, literal, integer, double, date, and lat long. Also, the first 5 type also have the array versions of them. So like for text, you have text array, for example. Then there's also many features for these fields. You can set them as facet. You can choose to be able to sort them. You can choose to be able to highlight them. You can use analysis scheme. You can set default value and so on and so forth. Code example, I want to keep it clean, so I only put down name and type. You can play with other fields if you want, but mainly you define index field here, and then after the index field, one very important step is indexing the domain itself. This must be done every time you define index fields. And it might feel a little weird because you haven't have any documents, but just understand that this is done right after you define index in any scenario with or without files on your system. Another thing is configure access. Do not forget to configure access because you might find yourself not being able to upload documents. So this page can be reached through going to your domain's dashboard, and then there is an access configuration page. Right now I'm allowing all access because I want to sample this file for you, but you need to go in and then play with it and see what you need. Third, but not the least, upload JSON documents. So in console, you have a variety of files you can upload. Over here, we'll show you the basic supported format, which is the JSON document. You can see it on the right here. So it's very simple. You specify a type of add or delete. You have to specify the ID and then the fields, right? And then the thing is, there's so many files that's supported for uploads with CloudSearch, so you can take a look here. Code sample here, very easy. Basically is a post request, right? You don't even need to do any SDK here, use any SDK methods here. It's a very simple post request. So you basically call the JSON file and you convert it to a string, and you pass it as a parameter, and then you get the response back. And then next, doing the search. Doing the search is also pretty simple. So after I sample how to upload just 5 JSON documents, I did it 3 more times, so we have 15 instead of 5, so we have more hits, and we also can find out like how search works. So over here, search is straightforward, is very, very resourceful tool as well. It accepts compiled queries. You can search range of values, rank by geographic location, etc., etc. So these are all the things you can go and play with, and this is definitely worth trying. So code sample here, straightforward, is another post request, right, with different 2 parameters here, the query and the return requested return column field. So this is quite simple. It returns for us 3 hits because that's how many repetition I have in the document, and that's it. Lastly, delete domain. Delete domain is very simple. You set the credential, you set the name, and then you go in and you just use the delete domain method. That's it. But however, after you delete the domain, you have to wait about like several minutes depending on the size of your domain. You just basically you have to wait like after you create, after you index, after you delete. So this is it. I hope this presentation is informative for you, and thank you for your attention.